should show him the video.
Who's
He's just
he?
joined VC.
Oh, he's just deafened
He
himself.
does know a lot about the law, though, doesn't he,
He
Queen?
just scared him away.
Kind of schooled everybody here on that one.
I just
I've
started.
posted it again just in case anybody missed it.
I've just started streaming. This is painful. Who could have predicted that?
They were just talking about your hot mic, Adric.
Don't know what that's about.
Oh no, mate.
No, seriously, what?
Go into the chat. Go into the chat and look at the video that Queen's posted of you. And then if you want to leave, we will understand.
Oh, Queen, don't be so mean.
Don't chase someone off, but you definitely want to listen to that, mate.
Well, if he wants to stay, I mean, he's more than welcome. It
Queen,
depends
what are we running off?
whether you've got some shame or not, doesn't it, really?
Look, there'll be no more of that.
If we want a proper legal expert on, we should, stay surely, because he does know about the law.
Just doesn't know how to turn his mic off, clearly.
A lot of lawyers and a lot of solicitors do very foolish things, in my experience.
This is
Yeah,
getting
it's-
very awkward for the only female on the
Yeah.
panel. I might drop, but I will be listening.
All right, sure thing, Queen. It's also the internet, so there's much worse things that could have happened.
I love it when people are so
Name one.
transparent in their motives.
Oh, it's gone.
2 bitcoins, 2 for 1 proof of the grave.
Brian, hot mic.
Yeah,
Adric's gone. You must have just watched it.
I don't think that's me hot micing, is it?
It's Mabbit.
I have a problem identifying who's actually hot micing. In my
I'm
experience.
using Oh, hang on, I'll just. I'm using a. What's it called? Jamboard. It's pretty cool. So I'll share it. I use this for work all the time. Actually, I shouldn't use my own one.
Why is it eggshells the globe birthers are struggling to prove this globe that they live on?
Because we don't use the word prove. So we aren't able to get to the same degree of certainty as you because we're not religious. We don't have one book that tells us what's right. And that's undoubtedly it's a flat earth text. There's many, many verses in there that tell you it's a flat earth text. And we don't have the same degree of certainty. We don't just read one book and assume we know it. We've got to keep looking. So we've got to keep changing our answer.
So you believe.
And a lot of the answers are counterintuitive. The numbers are too large to make sense of what a curve like that would look like. So we don't just believe one book.
I asked you a simple question.
Just one book. We don't just believe one book is my answer.
Okay.
You believe many books.
Well, measurements and tests and competing theories and a thick, vibrant marketplace of ideas where we can pick and choose based on what seems most probable with the best
Jerry.
data. We don't just pick one book.
Is that Jerry?
Hello.
Is that Jerry?
I don't know. Am I speaking
Yes.
out of...
Yes, Jerry.
I don't
Welcome,
know,
welcome.
You're obviously speaking when Chemo wanted to speak, so therefore.
I'm
you
just
should
welcoming
stop
Jerry to the
You could let
debate
someone
room.
finish their point first, though, couldn't you? That was a bit rude.
Yeah, so
He
welcome.
didn't want me to
Mr.
finish it. He didn't want to finish hearing it. It was quite
Yeah, because
apparent.
you're riding on eggshells. You're doing it on purpose for some
demonstrated
reason.
more than
You're
staying
mumbling
silent.
and rambling. We're only asking you simple questions. We're not looking for a monologue, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Chemo, can you remember that actual sentence when
Okay,
you
Dress,
actually
you're
monologued at
interrupting.
us for hours?
So, Jerry,
Yes, sir.
excellent. How did you find the server?
I found it through searching on YouTube. I'm a member of the other Discord server.
Which
And I
other
found-
Discord server?
The 24/7 Flat Earth.
Excellent. I know that server. I know the guys like Chocolate and Crypto,
Oh, yes, sir.
Elijah. Yeah, cool. Okay, good. So the guys here, obviously, you know, they're ball earthers. I understand.
Yeah.
So let's get into it. So riding eggshells. Let's be more specific here. Let's not have long poetry
I was
monologues.
asking you what your evidence was.
Because you were like, you're not
for it.
sure, you'll
Your
never be
evidence.
sure. So
Yeah.
Why are
what's
you
your
struggling
evidence?
to provide substantial, sufficient evidence that we're on a globe?
I think we've presented you a lot. You've managed to wave your hand at all
Okay,
of it.
fine. Show it to.
what shape-
We've got Jerry here.
No, no.
Have you shown Jerry?
Real simple question. Anybody?
Have you?
By the way, this thing, please, or swastikas on it. There's immediately going to be a swastika on there, isn't there?
Have you met Jerry before, Eggshells?
No, who's Jerry?
Right, Jerry. This is Eggshells. Eggshells, Jerry. Then you can.
Very nice to meet you, sir.
Yeah.
G'day.
Okay, so then tell Jerry why you think we're on a ball.
Because of the arguments and evidence that I see, it presents by far the better arguments, and it's able to provide a model which I can then test and check for myself, and it seems to work, even if some of the numbers seem extraordinary and curvature doesn't make sense in my brain. I can figure out that, yeah, this makes a far more compelling argument than a thing that refuses to have a model.
Where can I see this model that exhibits a sun that is exploding and attracting at the same time?
Sure, you can look at computer models of it. I could draw it on a napkin for you. I could just discuss it. Ideologically, I could go very big thing. I could describe it in many ways, including with computer programs and movies. I could make a movie about that because it's got a model. Whereas Flat Earth has just nothing. Just cannot. If I post this,
Eggshells,
people
come on.
say
How many times
that's not it.
He's got
Is this it? Yeah.
We've got another
no,
question
Flat
for you.
Earthers? Is that the model or not? Is the dome
He
like
asked
that?
you
Is
for
that where the
your
sun is?
model. You said you've got a model. He just asked you a simple question. Can I see your model about the sun? You went on about flat Earth. Very odd and peculiar.
Sure, yes. And my answer is yes. Yeah. In a movie, I can draw it on a napkin. I can explain it in words. Yeah, plenty of model I can give you.
Okay.
Is this your model? Can you do the same thing? What is your model, please? That's my question to the flat earthers in the room.
Okay, so from what you've told me, you said that you could make a drawing or a computer images, or you could explain it to me, and that would be good enough. It seems to me that that's exactly what the flat earthers also have, is that it only exists in the mind and on pictures and drawings. So it seems to me we're on the same level there.
No, because the flat earthers, here's me. If you're watching my stream, here's me doing it, right? This is my model, and it's pretty good. And people will go, well, the angle's a bit tight there, or it's not to scale because that's billions and billions more. And we could argue, and one of us would be right and the other would be wrong. Okay?
Yeah, but
or we'd both be wrong. But if I draw this, if I show you this flat Earth, where is it? Copy image. Will you, all of you flat earthers, agree, and will you have an evidence-based way of disagreeing with one another about whether there's a dome? Look, there's water falling off that one. Does water fall off it, or does that not seem to make sense? Can you have an evidence-based discussion about that?
Well, these are just pictures, so I don't really...
Yeah. Models, pictures.
Jerry,
ways
what do you
of
think a model is?
demonstrating it.
Well, hold on. Are you conceding the globe then, Eggshells? Are you saying there's no evidence for a globe? You want proof for a flat Earth?
No, I made a very simple, cogent point. Jerry understands it. He can answer it.
Yes, I do. It just exists in pictures and in the brain and concepts and math.
Testable concepts and models. Testable concept. Having a model is a good thing to have. It's a useful thing to have. A drawing of a house, a schematic of a car, a mud map that you showed somebody so they can find your farm. Anything, right? It's good to have a model. We can test it. We can make predictions with it. We can know how much fuel to put on board that aircraft. Do you have a model? What is it? That's all I'm asking for. And if you don't, let's talk about why you don't.
I could present pictures just like you can, and that's pretty much where we are.
Jerry,
sure, could you do so? That's awesome. Thank you very much for offering to do that, Jerry. Could you present one, please?
No.
Oh,
I can't.
I thought you just said you could. You just said I can present that to you. Sure, go ahead, Jerry. Present it, please.
Sure. I could give you a vague idea of what a map might look like.
So join that Jamboard. I posted that link in the chat. Yeah, I would love to do this actually. Sorry, and I'll be less aggressive. I'm being a bit of a prick. I'm sorry,
Well,
Jerry.
again, even if you concede, let's say
join that Jamboard and join on slide 3. And if you could draw it for me, I'd love to see it. That'd be awesome.
Let's say he can't make a model. You win. No flat Earth model. You've got a
Yeah.
globe model, right?
I mean, I've got a conception of what it might
Right,
be.
so that's what
I'm
we're
sure
saying.
there's
So
lots of
we
quibbling
don't have a
about bits of
model,
it.
we've got a map, but you don't accept that
Oh.
map. So let's say we concede. Can we get evidence now for the globe?
We've been playing that for 15 years, it sounds like, in this lobby. No, maybe 5. I don't know. I'm just saying, let's talk about your model. And if you don't have one, why? But not just, oh, can we get back to what I always wanted to say? No, we can't, Chemo. Sorry. Carry on. Sorry.
So you
Jerry.
want to
He
talk about what
sometimes
we
does
don't
that.
have?
When the conversation goes away from Chemo, he gets upset. I know it happens to me too. Go on, Jerry. Show us it, please.
Well, I just posted a map of what it might look like,
Sure.
but I don't live on a map. I live on the Earth. I don't live on a model, so I can't really.
Yeah. So we could draw lines on this map and figure out how to get from A to B. Is that what we could do?
Sure.
Do we do that?
You could do it. Go ahead.
I would have lots of copies of that map, right? Which map do you use to figure out how to get places? Because the more effective a map, the more copies you would make of it, correct?
Right. Well, I just use Google Maps, and I just go with that.
Okay. Interesting. I guess, though, sorry, I was thinking that was like, why would you use Google Maps when they have it as a ball? But I guess your idea is at a local section, it's flat, and they just lie when they get to the ball-sized bits.
Well, yeah.
Right. Would you say, Jerry, how much of your belief in flat Earth would you say rests on Scripture? Like if Scripture suddenly you interpreted it or somebody read it to you in a way that seemed to suggest that it was a ball, would you switch to a ball, or would you say the religion is wrong?
Well, some things I don't know. I mean, I could take faith. I could take some things on faith. Some things I'll just never know. So, I mean, I don't know.
So if one had to go, like if you went, I've measured this thing, I don't know, it could be anything, I guess, like.
Well, some things seem to be consistent with what the Bible says.
Okay.
But, you know,
which
again, I don't.
Out of interest, which things seem inconsistent with the Bible?
Well, when he says that when there's the face of the waters, a sphere doesn't have a face.
Okay. So I see. So the face, because the face is almost like closer to a ball shape, right? So they say the face of the waters. Is it? And okay, are there any other things that you feel are inaccurate like that, or less accurate than the bits that?
I don't really base it on the Bible. Like I know, like I said, I don't know.
Jerry, I have a question about that verse you brought up. Why would a biblical verse refer to a geometric definition we've defined in math?
Like what?
Face.
Tell me
the
what...
word face.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think it would. I think a lot of the biblical verses are metaphorical or written in more of a poetic sense.
Sure.
Not that I personally don't put any stock in anything in the Bible, but I don't see why that specifically would bother you.
Well, it doesn't really bother me. That's why I said some things seem to be consistent with what the Bible says, and some things I'll just never know. Like I'll never know how far it is to the sun. I'll never know the distances to the stars or any of that stuff. So, and it seems to me that yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, you said there's some things that seem consistent and some things I'll never know. Are there some things that are inconsistent in the Bible that you feel like I can look at them?
Sheeple, not sheeple. This is not a religious discussion.
Excuse me, Chemo. Excuse me. Jerry and I were just having a conversation.
All right, I was going to say, if you want a religious discussion, you can go into the religious room. We're trying to focus on the shape of the Earth.
And this is where the conversation has gone. It's called debate flat Earth and more. Not
yeah,
gets
but
to
again,
grab
it's
the
not a
mic
religious
when he doesn't
discussion.
like where the conversation's going. Thank you. So are there some things that seem
we've
less
got-
consistent, or is everything to you, Jerry, consistent with the Bible? Because it seemed like there were two categories.
I haven't really thought about it, so I'm going to have to concede on this one.
So there's nothing. You haven't thought about whether there's inconsistencies in the Bible.
Right. Because
That's
don't
interesting.
know, because as far as the Bible goes, the way I see it is the books that are in there for a reason. There were certain books taken out by the church for what? It's like, why couldn't they give us the whole thing? So
yeah.
So that's where I'm coming from, and there's a lot of ancient kind of maps or like depictions of the Earth that would suggest flat with a dome over it. So I don't know, but then again, like I said, I don't live on a model. So the way I come at this is I observe a flat stationary plane, and all the evidence for the globe doesn't stand up to scrutiny.
So how we can scrutinize it? Because I think that's a very, very valid point. I would also add to some of the things you said there, which is I agree the Bible is a flat Earth book. I also just think, as you said, there are books that didn't make it into the Bible. There was. Is it the Nicaea or something, that council where they all went, we decide what's canon and what's not, and they chucked out a bunch of books? Apparently also one might have alluded to Jesus at some time having a partner.
All right, so it looks like you're not ready for a globe discussion, Eggs.
Excuse me, Kimo.
He asked about the evidence is not to scrutiny.
Can you wait until I'm taking breath rather than just suddenly steamroll it?
Because you're insistent on the religious discussion.
Rude way to do it.
Yes, but you're insistent on a religious discussion, okay? And he brought up the evidence for the globe is not
unspeakably
sufficient.
rude, Kimo. I'm just going to mute you because nobody else will.
Well, like I said,
I'm just going to keep speaking over him. I
Don't mute him.
to
Put him down
as well.
to like 5, because that'll muting a mod is not allowed. Just put him down to 5.
well, I mean, again, it's up to him. But like I said, he's already brought up his position on the Bible. He says he doesn't know enough about it.
As I was saying, Jerry.
Okay, so it's not
there
going to
are
work.
these.
Riding on let's mute.
Yeah. So look, Jerry made his
Why
position.
should he be muted when he's been
Riding on, everybody mute. Riding on eggshells.
No, why
right
should
now.
we mute someone who's been respectful, but allow someone who's been disrespectful to continue?
Crap.
It's
No,
fine
whether
now,
you agree or
Brian.
not, he's been respectful.
Chemo.
No, it's not listening to
Brian.
me. We're not listening to me. It's Jerry has already put out his position. He said the globe evidence. What did you say, Joe? It's not sufficient.
Right, you're not even listening, Chemo. So Brian,
I don't want to put words in his...
why should we stop, Chemo? Why should we mute someone who's not being disrespectful? Whether you agree with what he's saying or not, he's still being respectful.
No.
But Chemo is trying to destroy and take over a conversation, but you say that should be allowed.
Yes. Go on, Chemo. Go for it.
Wow.
Well, no, not quite. It's not about that, Bio and Brian. Fact is...
No, Brian confirmed it.
No, it's not even about that. Jerry...
I personally don't want to listen to the twat. Okay?
No one
wants
to listen to you either, Brian.
Fucking gonna tell
I
me.
don't want to hear a word you have to say,
You're a
Mabbit. Shut up,
complete
Mabbit.
fucking asshole.
Yeah, Brian. Can we get a server mute on Brian, because I personally don't want to listen to him.
Okay.
That's
Well,
essentially
just
what
mute me then.
That's your logic, Brian. That you want writing muted on the server because you personally don't want to him. So I'm going to do that same thing to you. Can we please mute Brian because I don't want to listen to him.
Yeah, but that wasn't the reason, Bio. Right?
No, we're going with Brian. Brian personally doesn't want to hear him, so he's fine with him being server muted. I personally don't want to hear Brian. He should be server muted.
Jerry made his position...
I know why Chemo muted riding on eggshells.
I mean, yeah, not a lot of us want to hear about Bible talk shit, but maybe he was moving away from that, but now we
I don't
won't
think
know
he was.
because he got muted by Chemo.
No, he wasn't.
Let me just point out...
Right,
let me just point out one quick thing. Let me point out...
Don't let them derail your show. Take
Not my
control.
show.
Mabbit, come on.
Take control.
Jerry's hot micing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
They were having a perfectly fine conversation until fucking Chemo had to step in.
Well, it's his fucking show.
It's not
No,
his
It's
no,
not
fucking
my
it
show,
isn't.
Brian.
Damn.
This isn't his server. He's just a fucking mod that abuses his powers constantly.
Chemo, are you brainwashing the flat earthers that come here, Chemo?
No, I didn't. I don't know where he gets that from. I didn't say it's my show. This is Gem's server. I'm just a moderator,
So
and all
the
that happened
place I
here.
was going with it, Jerry, was essentially,
Don't
is
do
it
that.
good to be able to test things
Don't do
and
that.
R models?
Don't do that.
Wow, you don't agree with what he's talking about, so he's server muted. Good job, Chemo. You're lowering the bar yet again.
Not talking to. Can you
Chemo,
stop doing
he
that?
was-
I
he
will
was-
release
he was-
him in a minute.
Chemo, he was about to finish up.
Yeah, I'm
Like,
just
my
making my
goodness.
point, and then we can get back to it. I'm not explaining why it happened. It wasn't because of that.
We
Jerry
all
made
know
his.
your point.
Jerry made his
You didn't,
position.
want to, you didn't want to hear about
It's about Chemo, Ryan. Chemo, we love you.
Jerry made his position clear on the Bible. Doesn't know enough. He needs to do more research. And then
Cool.
he said he wants to talk about the globe not having sufficient evidence to prove that what you guys say. So
Okay, cool. I'll ask Jerry a question. Can you please server unmute?
Yes.
Unmute
Okay.
eggshells. I'll ask Jerry a question about the shape of the earth.
Okay, let's get back to it.
Okay. Jerry, are you here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you were talking about you don't live on a model. I get it. You live in reality. Okay. So there are a lot of there's a huge amount of things that we can dive really deep on that have to do with reconciling observations that we did completely different unrelated observations that we make and measurements that we make and having them make sense and all be consistent with each other on either a spherical earth or a flat earth. And so I think the foundation of sort of Eggshell's questions, his initial questions before it got to religion, was you don't have to consider model for either one. Just consider things that you said you observe a flattened stationary. You live on a flattened stationary Earth. That's not okay. That's your own senses, sure. But beyond that, things like the altitude to a specific star as you traverse the Earth, or how do you how would you reconcile the motion of the sun and the moon, and certain times of years the moon coming in front of the sun, or the sun coming in, the Earth coming between the sun and the moon. There's things like this that flat Earth doesn't answer, that flat Earth just simply has no answer for, that makes sense in reality.
It proudly claims I have no model. I so agree with you. Yeah, sorry, carry on.
Well, the reason why I don't know why I can't reconcile that is because I can't get up to the stars and see what's going on. And if we know anything, yeah,
go on,
go ahead.
Go on, mate. No, I was rude then. You carry on.
Continue.
All right. As far as the sky goes, that's just the sky. Like it really is. It's like amazing when I look up there and I see the moon and I say, "What is that?" It's like I don't know.
Yeah.
As far as eclipses,
What does it look like to you?
What does what? Oh, I don't know, because sometimes it looks solid, and early in the mornings you could see right through it.
Yeah. So Jerry, can you also see? Are you in the northern hemisphere? I'm just curious. On the
Yes.
flat Earth, on whatever shape Earth you think you are. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So if you look at the moon, you see features on the moon, whether it's solid or real or fake or whatever. You see features, craters, and different colorations and things. And someone on the southern hemisphere of this whatever shaped Earth you want to say, way more south of you, sees the same moon in a completely different orientation. Things like simple observations like this can absolutely not be answered with living on a flat stationary plane. There's just no way that they can be answered. It's not complicated. It's pretty simple in my opinion.
Well, as far as I see it, is if you paint a 7 on your ceiling, and then you step away to the other side of the room, it's going to look upside down.
Yeah, exactly. That's what he's talking about.
Which would occur on both models.
Right, but the ceiling is still flat, and the ground is still flat. So,
right. So now, pretend that pretend like your head is the Earth, and just spin. Don't move on the flat ground. Don't deviate from the flat ceiling. Just spin. It's gonna be upside down again.
I did that in my chair. I made a YouTube video of that when I first started doing Flat Earth.
well, that would apply only if somebody was walking on my head, and they did it.
And let me just add to that, Jerry. It's a good point you're making, but what should be considered is not just a single. So I'm giving multiple different examples. So the key, in my opinion, you can disagree. The key is combining all of these different disparate observations and measurements, and reconciling, getting them all to make sense and work on whatever shape that you're living on.
But that's
to make
only
a model, right?
Right,
Yeah.
but that's only if I don't scrutinize each one. It's kind of like building a house on sand. It's like, yeah, you might have a house there, but I mean, if you really look at it, it's not going to stick up to.
It's very important to scrutinize. It's very important to scrutinize every single one.
Hmm.
I'm staying away from using the word model eggshells, but essentially, yes, this is you're able to with this information that you have and combining all of these different pieces of information you have, you can make predictions and
Exactly. You can go, how much fuel do I want? Or what would this look like from there? Or what happens if I hit this thing with this other thing? You can make a prediction, test it, and then out of that, you can build airliners. And but the challenge that Jerry has said here is...
You cut out. I hear a lot of flat earthers get they're I'm not saying they're scared of the word model, but they're so quick to just throw it away and just think that it doesn't represent reality when in my opinion it obviously does. But so I don't like invoking that word as much. I like sticking to all of these completely separate, not independent, not connected to each other observations and measurements and empirical things that you can do and combine together to figure out what shape you live on, not just any given one thing. But I agree, you want to scrutinize every single one, but these observations and these every single one has been scrutinized for decades and hundreds of years and has withstood stood solidly against that's scrutinizing.
Or can we scrutinize how the distance to the sun was measured?
Of course.
Okay, so could you explain to me how that was done?
I mean, there's many different ways to do that. I guess what was the original one by I think some Greek guy was it Aristarchus? I don't remember all the details, but it was some original one.
Aristophanes?
No, he didn't do the distance to the sun. I'll find it in a minute.
Oh no! Yeah. He did the shape of the Earth. Yeah.
He determined the size of the Earth. The size of the Earth.
That was his brother.
Right.
That was his brother.
It was Aristarchus. Aristarchus.
Yet you believe this complete nut and nonsense.
That's a great addition, Brian.
It. Yes, I believe
Yet you fell at the first hurdle.
Nabbit, behave yourself.
Measure.
Nabbit, I will take you to another room and read the Bible to you.
Straight
Calm
away.
down.
Straight away. You have
Mabbit, knowing random facts.
Argument.
Brian Mabbit, Just because we don't know random facts doesn't mean our argument is not true.
It was Aristarchus, right?
Random
Yes,
fact.
Aristarchus.
A random fact.
Yes,
So-
it is a random fucking fact. We don't need to know who first
Look,
measured.
Nabbit,
how
you don't get to
far-
do this, okay?
No, we don't want to know who.
We
We want to know how. How the fuck did they measure it?
Using trigonometry. Trigonometry is the answer to that question.
All right, let Nabbit go. Go ahead and talk to Jerry.
So, he's okay. Anyways, Jerry, yes, Aristarchus is one of the first. I didn't necessarily have to go directly to that, but in the historical, for chronological reasons, people can discuss the first methods that were used. But what's way more cool and interesting, in my opinion, is we've sent countless probes. We have launched countless probes that are not fake and that are not projections. By some Illuminati global government cabal that have explored our solar system. Countless probes. So
Now, do the trajectories of these satellites depend on any assumptions that are already made, or no?
do they depend on any assumptions that have been made?
They assume the only things they assume are the verified facts that have been proven before it. They assume that those verified evidences are good.
Yeah, so they're generically, generally, I won't be able to point out a specific satellite launches that failed and stuff like that. But as you progress your scientific capability and your understanding of orbital mechanics and launching things and satellites and all this, you get you gradually get better and better at doing this. So probably the first however many first handful of satellites that have been launched or orbited were very very inefficient. And I think Sputnik only was the very first one, Sputnik, orbited 3 times before it came back to Earth. So it's if you're asking about basing it on what escape velocity you want to get this object to based on the Earth's gravity and things like this is rooted in work hundreds and hundreds of years in the making. Satellite exploration is only 60 years old, 70 years old.
So these probes, how did you get them into a vacuum?
We launched them into a vacuum.
So how do they propel themselves in a vacuum?
Rockets use conservation of momentum to propel themselves.
There was a pretty legitimate conversation going on just for this kindergarten bullshit to come up.
Okay, we'll take that. How do they steer them then?
With propulsion.
You've gone quiet.
Propulsion, Brian. Sorry it took 2 seconds. I'm sorry that it took 2 seconds to answer your question, Brian.
So Jerry,
satellites are steered in orbit. Push against. What do the surfaces push against?
They use conservation of momentum. Rockets use conservation of momentum. They shoot shit out the back, and that propels them forward.
Right? How do they steer them?
It's not fucking propelling.
How do they steer them?
I know, but he's having an issue with movement. So yes, as Curve said, satellites don't have propulsion, but you're talking about the motion, so that's what we're answering.
How do they steer them?
Why would you? What purpose would you need to steer a satellite, Brian Nabbit?
How do
that
they
comes
slow
into a
them down?
just the orbit?
How do they slow them down?
If you wanted to slow them down, you would fire if you wanted to. There isn't many reasons why, unless you want to deorbit a satellite. But you would fire a retro thruster in the opposite direction of its velocity.
What's that pushing against?
It works on the conservation of momentum. Are you not hearing Andy?
So you've got a rocket now facing forward and backwards.
What do you know? You can put thrusters on.
Fucking
What?
deluded, man.
Have you not seen a satellite with different thrusters on all sides?
They've got fuck all to push against, you thick cunt.
It doesn't require anything to push against, Brian. That's the entire mistake.
Prove that. Fucking prove it, you thick twat.
The conservation of momentum is sufficient.
Fucking prove it.
Brian, if you shoot a shotgun, what pushes against your arm when you shoot it?
That's in our fucking atmosphere, you thick cunt.
But does
Can't
it?
do it in a fucking vacuum.
People have.
You
Brian,
fucking
Brian,
moron.
I'll prove it as soon as you provide a site.
You go fucking mental.
Perfect.
I'm telling ya.
Great rebuttal.
They
So
have
Brian,
pickled
as soon
your
as
fucking brains.
all right, perfect. Great rebuttal. As soon as you provide a citation that says that you need material or a medium to push off of, then I'll provide evidence. How about that? Understand the principle before looking at evidence.
There is no fucking principle.
That's a good statement, actually.
A rocket
Noted.
pushes off the fucking atmosphere.
We've got your broken opinion, Babbitt, over and over. We got it. Right,
Can I just get a steering wheel?
You're the ones that are in a fucking religion. You are in a fucking religion, and you
Babbitt.
cannot see it.
Babbitt,
They have
did I
twisted
make a
your
mistake
mind.
unmuting you?
Yes, I think you did.
Do
I
I
want
need
to
to
get back.
correct that mistake, Babbitt?
I want to get back to. I want to get back to Jerry real quick. So to answer your last question that you asked, the historical progression of our capabilities has led us to orbiters going around the Earth, and then we've moved our way further and further away from the Earth through scientific, progress, pushing, forward scientific understanding, and now we can explore out, our neighborhood and our solar system.
So how do they know how fast they need to go? What is that
They use
based
math.
on? How do
They use
okay,
math.
now, could you tell me more about the formulas?
Sure thing. I can tell you to the extent of my knowledge, and if I'm missing anything, someone else can cover me or back me up. But there's formulas that are derived from just basic first principles of the laws of motion, and the laws of gravity. And so something like the Earth, it takes a specific amount of velocity to get to escape its gravitational welter, to put something in orbit. So I'm sure you've seen the very elementary, very simplified little GIF of like the cannon shooting a little cannonball, off the surface of the Earth at different velocities. So it never reaches orbit until it is launched at a fast enough velocity to continue to miss the Earth as it's falling toward the Earth. So that's sort of, there you go. And in the chat, there's a ton of formulas that people have been.
Chronic, is your uncle Bill Nye?
I don't talk about that publicly. Go ahead, Jerry.
Oh wow.
This second, let me see here. Okay, now for V, escape equals square root 2 GM divided by R. How is that R found out?
R is the distance from the center of mass of the object that you're worried about. So from Earth, we would have to add the Earth's radius to the elevation above the Earth.
Okay, how is the radius of the Earth found out?
Now we're talking.
Over the course of human history, there's been plenty of experiments that have measured to within great accuracy the circumference and the radius of the Earth, and the specific gravity of the Earth, and the value for big G, and the value
such
for
as what?
I think the most common way modern is using satellite pictures and what was it, LiDAR? I know. Great rebuttal, Brian. So anyway, I think it's through the pictures and LiDAR.
Bio, if you start,
Did he say satellite
so
pictures?
these
They're
are why
all
this
fucking faked.
So Jerry, this is the reason that I start when a question like that has been asked. You're definitely not the first. I'm sure you understand. You're not the first to be asking these types of questions.
Oh yeah. Sure.
So yeah. So Bio and Jerry, the reason why I start to answer this question in a historical matter is because people like Brian will just laugh when we give the current
yeah, that's a fair point.
Current ways of doing it. So anyways, back to the historical record. Those darn Greeks that loved their math and loved their measurements that they made. Eratosthenes is one that comes to mind. There's been a few more that I'm probably blanking on, but there have been measurements that have been made to within a good amount of precision, even for the Greeks way back in the day, that have measured the circumference of the Earth.
Now, when Aristophanes did that, did he make any assumptions first, or did he just? Yeah.
Yes, obviously he did. He needed to assume parallel light rays, and that the sun was very, very far away.
Did he also already assume that the Earth was a sphere?
He knew that the Earth was a sphere.
And how was that figured out?
You don't need to know the size of an object to know the shape of an object.
How did he know the shape?
I don't know. I haven't had a chance to talk to him. Sorry.
It's probably just the common observations, such as sun obstruction at horizons, shit like that. Probably eclipses as well, since they had a very good understanding. It's probably a number of observations that led him to determine that it was a three-dimensional shape, and he probably just assumed the particular three-dimensional shape. But even then, he might have known for sure.
Which observations might one make to assume that the Earth was a sphere?
Like I said, the sun obstruction at the horizon, that'd be a good one. And then eclipses would be another good one. If they travel at all to celestial poles, that's a good one as well. So just look observations. That's all.
Beyond just the visible observations, there also the original was Eratosthenes, two different lines of latitude, and the angles that sticks made or shadows made when sticks were in the ground. So that again, that's the original. But since then, okay, so you can say that, and I'll give it to you definitely, that there may have been some degeneracies, like assuming a distant sun when maybe a local one might have worked on the same thing. So that, but the thing is that since Eratosthenes, there's been countless, even someone in here organized repeating the Eratosthenes experiment with just more than 2 sticks. So when you add even just a third stick or a third meter stick or a third observation, it breaks that close. It breaks the close sun degeneracy. So it confirms the shape of the circumference of the Earth and the distant sun, and that light rays are entering approximately parallel to each other, are hitting the Earth approximately parallel.
Okay.
I hope you're not listening to this shit, Jerry.
Yeah, Mabbit. No, it doesn't really provide anything.
Another great rebuttal, Brian.
Anything
These
worth
people
listening
are
to.
paid to carry on.
None
this
of us
fucking
get any money to be here except for Jem, because it's a server and people give him money for running the server and running his YouTube channel. That's it. None of us get paid for doing this shit.
I wish.
Lying bastard.
I wish, Brian. I wish, man.
You are a lying bastard.
Brian, you're getting paid for spreading disinformation.
I'm not spreading any disinformation. I'm saying what you're saying is a complete
a disinformation repository, Mabbit. You understand that?
Just listen to what comes out of your fucking
repository.
mouth.
Well, he didn't deny that he wasn't getting paid.
Yeah, and you're a fountain of wrong, you thick cunt shill.
Right, Brian. That's all I was pointing out is
complete and utter fucking nonsense.
Right, no need to project. All I was trying to show is that you can say whatever the fuck you want, but we're just going to say it right back. So if you get emotional about it, maybe think about what you say next time.
Is Jerry still
No, I
here?
won't.
Yes, Jerry.
You
this
come here and physically fucking lie.
Well, let's hear
Knowingly
Jerry's. Let's hear
I mean,
and
it's your
Jerry's.
opinion,
purposely come
but-
here and fucking lie.
Brian, does
let's
somebody
hear,
who believes something?
Let's hear
Is that-
Jerry's response to sticks in the ground and shadows. Is he satisfied? Jerry, does that provide you sufficient evidence that you want to ball 3959?
No, because as far as eclipses go, there's no way for me to scientifically conclude that it is the moon that is going in front of the sun, because in order for me to validate that, I'd have to somehow manipulate the moon.
Jerry,
And-
have you watched the eclipse?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what did it look like was happening to you then, if it wasn't the moon?
I just observed some type of disc or something.
Okay, to me, it looked very much like the moon. It had the same features as the moon. Even though it's a new moon, you can still see the features on the moon.
Yeah, but that wouldn't really stand up in court.
I mean,
all right, here's the most simplest way to put it. Other than man-made objects, when you look up in the sky, and obviously distant stars, the lights, have you ever seen more than two gigantic things in the sky ever?
No, sir.
Right. So based on all of the evidence that's in the sky, is there any reason to think that there is a third body covering the sun that isn't the moon?
I have heard ancient stories about two dark bodies that are up there, but I mean, I don't know. But in order, but again, in order for me to say that it was definitely the moon, I would need to manipulate that, and I can't do it. So I'm kind of stuck.
Why do you think you need to physically manipulate something in order for you to know what it is?
Because that's as far as I know, that's how the scientific method is done.
Well, that would be false.
So you don't need to manipulate your independent variable.
No, absolutely not.
It's not an experiment. It's an observation. It's strictly an observation.
Well,
you're not performing an experiment. You're looking at something, going in front of another thing, and you're determining just what it is. That's all. Not what happens if I do this. It's what is it? That's the question.
Right. Well, the thing is that solar eclipses only happen during new moon phases. So the moon disappears. So
Doesn't
there's no
disappear,
reason.
Jerry. Jerry, you can see the moon during a new moon.
Where?
In the day sky.
I've never seen that. But
you've never looked up in the sky and seen the moon during a new moon.
No.
I remember doing it when I was like 7 years old. I remember seeing a new moon.
All right,
I've been seeing new moons my entire life.
So Jerry, it's also telling though. So what Bio said earlier about, you've never experienced more than two gigantic things in the sky, and then you brought up some ancient text thing. Expanding on what Bio said, it's also extremely telling to combine that knowledge with the understanding that the only time we ever see a solar eclipse is when the moon's phase is at a new moon. We've never ever in the history of humans witnessing solar eclipses have we ever seen a solar eclipse happen, and then that night or the night after we see a big phase of the moon, half moon, crescent moon or something, right? Those combining those two things. So I'm still on this point about combining multiple empirical things together to expand our understanding and our knowledge.
It still seems like an assumption though, so I can't really go on that one.
I think it's a basic low-hanging fruit out, where it's a assumption for whatever reason. You can call it an assumption, but it's probably one of the safest assumptions to make. It's almost like saying I have to go to the grocery store, so I'm going to consciously make it an effort to think that I'm assuming I'm not going to crash. I'm assuming my car won't blow up. No, you don't have to assume those things, because based on the evidence prior, your car has never blown up. There's no reason to think it's going to.
Can I? Yeah. Sorry, Jerry. If you wanted to, I did have another follow-up question about.
Well, the claim is that it's scientifically proven, and well, not proven because I know that science doesn't prove things, but it seems to conclude that it is definitely the moon that's going in front of the sun. I'd have to, manipulate that, and I can't.
So another.
Hello.
Oh, go ahead,
Sorry
Ross.
to butt in. Can I just get a quick mic check to see if I'm back on?
Yes, you
Yes,
can hear you loud and
Ross,
clear.
loud and clear.
All right, cool. Thank you.
So one more cool piece of sort of an empirical observation that you can make and you can combine with these other pieces of information and understanding is something like observing the moon, observing the outer edges of the moon. So we can look at these features in great detail. Just on the outer edge of the moon. And we see huge valleys and craters and mountainous type regions where it's we see a bunch of features on the outer rim of the moon. And during a solar eclipse, we also observe something that's been named Bailey's beads, which are sunlight that's traveling through that's traveling through these features on the outer edge of the moon that are consistent with what we see when we're looking at the moon not in an eclipse.
I would be interested to see that.
Yeah, BioDuel just put a link in the chat. They're called Bailey's beads. So it's the sunlight, coming through these valleys and these crevices and these craters, just on the outer rim of whatever object this is that's blocking the sun, and they happen to be perfectly consistent with the features that we observe on the object known as the moon.
This might be a good one. There's a few at different times, so you can see as the moon passes and moves, the features on the edges will change because you're getting different angles on different features. So the one I just posted is probably a really good one.
Yep. Yeah, you can see how the surface features on the outer edge of the moon they're blocking sunlight, but or whatever object this is blocking parts of the sunlight coming to you, and then as it moves across, it's allowing more sunlight. It's the motion of this object across it. So it's again just another. I know I'm beating a dead horse, but it's yes, of course, we're not going to the moon and moving it and touching it during a solar eclipse, but it's it's an unfortunate sort of something that's perpetuated for a while now about this what actually is science thing that's rather unfortunate to hear about.
Can I ask why the moon appears to be transparent during early morning hours?
Is that not an atmospheric effect? I don't know exactly what you're asking, but
Well, you could see through, like at night, you could see it's gray and black, but during the day it's gray and kind of light and blue. And I'm not like,
so
why
Jerry,
would?
are you saying that you've seen the new moon before and you think it looks transparent?
No, just in the morning when
Okay,
it's still up.
So in the morning when there's sunlight, you're looking through Earth's atmosphere, which is being lit up, which causes a blue tint because of Rayleigh scattering at everything you look at through the atmosphere. So when you're looking at the moon through the atmosphere during the day, it's going to look blue.
And why do the shadows caused by the craters appear blue? Why aren't they black?
The real answer to that is I don't know. For anybody.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking
I'd have
about.
I'd have to see an example of what you're talking about, and examples of this different coloring or see-through moon as well. I have to see examples.
And let's also be honest about the globe side. Even then, it's only well-educated guesses we're making. We're not saying it is this, you've got to believe us. We're going, I don't know, check it out, measure it, make a guess, build a model and test it. And if your model stands up to even people trying to tear it down, then you can be more assured that model is closer to correct. And what Chronic is saying is we can model and predict when the moon's going to do this.
I just posted an example of what I'm talking about.
So that's just those.
But that's my side dropping out.
No.
So that it's going to look blue.
You cut out a lot, Andy. A lot.
Oh
Yeah,
well.
go back to the start.
Oh, I thought
sorry,
that
mate.
was me.
I mean, if somebody else, am I still cutting out?
Just say it again.
You're good
You
now.
were saying that's what?
Yeah.
Something is what?
So it's still the same explanation that I gave before for why it looks blue. It doesn't look. I don't think the moon
It's
looks
white
transparent to
through blue
me.
smoke.
Are you talking about the dark side of the moon looks blue?
No, the shadows that would
The
be
craters.
caused. Yeah.
I mean, you're just looking through the Earth's atmosphere. That's
Right,
lit
which
up.
is why the sky is blue. So it's going to
Yeah.
give a blue tint like that.
Certainly a good question to ask. I think it's a good idea, Jerry, to be asking questions. I just think it's an idea to get them from more than one book.
And to me, you just the dark at night when you can see the moon and it's not a full moon, but you can still see the dark side of the moon. The reason you can see it is because there's nothing else that's very bright in the sky at night. But during the day, you're never going to be able to see the not lit up side of the moon.
Right, because it's going to have no light, so it'll be black, and the background behind it is also black. A simple experiment is put a flashlight on your desk in a room with all of your lights out, curtains closed, and then have a basketball. Now put the basketball where the light can hit it. You're going to be able to clearly see one side, for sure. And then the other side, in a dark room with a flashlight not hitting that backside, you're literally not going to see the backside. It may look invisible like you see in this picture, but there's no light for your eyes to see it, essentially.
I've also seen what appears to be footage of seeing stars through the dark portion of the moon. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that.
That's a common one, and the explanation would be the lights on top of buildings. So when you, I'm pretty sure the one that you're talking about is the one that's the moon looks to be setting down into the left, and as it hits the horizon, it looks like stars. But those are just the lights on top of buildings, because as you see, it does silhouette buildings in front of it. So it's just the lights on the top of those buildings.
Okay.
Yeah, the only stars I've ever seen through buildings were in drawings.
I could also imagine the ISS looking like a star. I mean, it moves at a pretty swift clip across the sky, but it would look.
Or
it would
other
probably
satellites.
Winkle.
Yeah, you can see
any other satellite maybe if there's low enough and big enough.
I'm going to try to find that video because that's a pretty common one.
Yeah,
setting at the horizon and it looks like stars.
If we answered all of these questions, Jerry, because they're really good questions, would that sway you, do you think? Or would it need to be scripture that changed before you change on this?
No, well, it's like you guys said, you don't have all of the answers, and for me to doubt what I experience, I'm gonna have, it's gonna take a lot.
So, because I think you're right, we don't have all the answers. Do you think all of them is the correct number of answers to go for, or do you think one could say you do seem to have some answers? Because I think he's been doing a really good job, Chronic, of describing how we can predict things based on a model. Do you think it's useful to be able to do that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can get numbers to match other ones, but like, what do they represent in reality? What in reality would necessitate the use of these models?
So
I guess lots of reasons. If I wanted to make solar panels, I would probably want to point them at the sun. If I wanted to get on a plane, I would want to know how much fuel to put on board. Certainly my dad used to have to pay a lot of attention to that. There's lots of reasons you'd want to be able to do that. Wouldn't you agree? How long is this going to take me to drive there? Is this an all-day drive or just a morning?
Tidal predictions as well.
Yeah. Would this be a good time to go boating? So if you can model that and there's value in that, and we are understanding the majesty of God's creation, and there's individual value in it, why wouldn't we? What would be the because it seems like it's not just a thing that you do. Sorry, I mean flat earthers do, but it seems something that flat earthers assertively say we don't have a model, like it's a good thing. Why is it? What makes it reasonable or valuable to say I'm not able to make predictions about the world and I'm proud of that?
Because while it might be pragmatic and while it might be useful, is it true is what I want to know.
How could it be pragmatic and useful if it wasn't true? Unless I knew that it was correct.
So I feel like that's actually a valid point. There are things that we use sometimes in daily life that aren't 100% accurate, but they work. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now.
Sure.
But it's like thumb rules that aren't actually quite right or something like that. But
right.
The
they
thing
would be
is
valuable in proximity, in proportional to their proximity to right, though, won't they?
Right.
The closer they are, the more useful they are, the more we'll use them,
Absolutely.
the better results we'll get,
Yeah.
typically, wouldn't we say? Like building a car or... So it's... I don't know. If I thought there could be a conspiracy to change the shape of the planet, I would think it's those people choosing which books go in the Bible, deliberately picking flat Earth text. That to me would be a much more believable conspiracy that I can imagine 14 men in a room when there's no such thing as theodolites. That to me is when you'd conduct the conspiracy and you'd get found out for it, and they're right. They're just in the wrong shape. Why would God not want you to know how much fuel to carry? Why would he make it so work well one way, but not the way his book said, unless other people change what was in the book?
And as far as I know, there's two types of surveying done: is planar and geodetic.
Yep.
And for planar, they use just what they see. They just do 2 points or 3 or however many points, and it's for small areas, and it's just they just take it as it is. But for geodetic, they do that too. But then afterwards they add spherical trigonometry.
So they don't add it afterwards. It's already built into the technology that they're using to survey.
So why would they need to not include that in what is it? The first one,
because the curvature of the Earth is so mind-numbingly large that on a small scale, if you're off by a fraction of an inch, it's not going to matter for most things. Like if I'm building a house, I just need to make it mostly correct, right? I don't need it right to an inch within a mile, or 8 inches per mile. You just don't need that kind of accuracy on small scale surveying.
That's a good
what
point.
Scale do you reckon, Jerry, you would need to start taking into account the curvature? What do you think is the smallest building that we would need to go, oh, make sure you account for the curvature? That's at 8 inches per mile square.
I don't know. I think the Earth is flat, so I don't know.
So assuming
so
that
your
the
point
Earth
is
is
about
not
surveying.
flat.
Yeah, the point about surveying, these guys were saying, what size do you think engineers would start going, oh, remember that it curves?
I saw it was around 1,000 kilometers squared is when they start with that.
No, so that'll just be the total area of a survey. They're not making 1,000-kilometer measurements each time. That'll just be that.
I'm saying if it's over that, if it's that or more, then they add. Then they start to account for curvature.
So my good friend
on this.
just started working for Wyoming Water Service or whatever, and he is now using a high precision surveying tool to measure like how much dam walls it move and the surface of lakes and stuff like that. And built into that tool is, it uses GPS satellite to determine its position. You use a gravimeter to figure out how much gravity there is, and it built in is curvature of the Earth so that it takes accurate measurements. And that's just doing like lakes and dams.
So shouldn't all those lakes and dams people be flat earthers?
The ones literally measuring the Earth. Yeah.
Yeah. If that's their job, wouldn't the moment you got that job, because you're not NASA where they're, that guy's lives in the burbs and.
To be fair, there are a couple surveyors that are flat earthers, but they're all
Really?
planar surveyors.
I want to talk to them. Do you know their name? I mean, guess not. Don't dox people here.
Okay, so look, usually when we have guests, we offer a drink or something to what would they like. So, Jerry, what would you like as evidence of the globe?
That's a good question.
What would bring you back to the globe? Now, for example.
Yeah, great question.
For example, what would bring me back is a scientific experiment of gravity, this pulling force. So we've got BioJewel here. He's going to do an experiment.
There it is.
He's going to do an experiment that's never been seen before by human eyes. There are papers about it. They've spoke about it. This is Cavendish in a vacuum. So he's going to conduct this experiment. He's got the necessary parts. So once he does this, this would be...
Kimo, it's too late for you to be sucking my dick, man.
This would be
because you have no idea what's going on with it. If you want someone to explain it,
I'm just saying my position. I'm just saying.
Right?
Hold on. I'm just saying my position of what will bring me back is if we have an explanation for why the water stays on the ball, how the gas stays on the Earth without going into space. Yeah. So once BioJewel...
I would love an explanation of the Cavendish.
Hold on a second. I'm nearly finished. Almost done. So once Bio does this, Jerry, this would be sufficient enough for me, not for most people, but for me to say there's a pulling force. We've varied all the variables. We've manipulated the variables. We know the cause to the effect. So for you, Jerry, what would bring you back to the globe, as it were?
A north-south circumnavigation along a single line of longitude. That would seal the deal for me.
Father did that in a plane.
One orbit did it.
Along a single line of longitude, I haven't.
Oh no, sort of due north-south. Do you mean due north-south, or do you just mean crossing from the northern hemisphere into the southern hemisphere?
Well, just when you cross over the South Pole, and you come all the way back around.
I see. I see.
Circumnavigation rather than east and west, north to south.
Yeah, right.
Actually, I think he'd be quite happy doing going from a southern point on somewhere like Argentina across to say South Africa. That sounds like that would satisfy him if along a single line. Would that do it for you, Jerry?
No, I said longitude, not latitude.
Sorry, I meant longitude.
What did you say now? From
because you went from Argentina to say South America, using a single line of longitude, going across the Antarctic. That would do it for you, I'm guessing.
I would have to see.
Would you think that if you were trying to convince us, I know you're not, but if you were trying to convince us of the flat Earth, would we need to start with the religion, or could I'm an sort of atheist agnostic? Do you think I would come to the flat Earth belief without the Bible, or I would need to become a Christian first?
No, I think you just don't take anything on assumption. Not anything, but like don't take, like the radius of the Earth. It's like no one's ever taken a tape measure down there and come all the way up.
I certainly haven't. I'd be like, how many people have before? What are their rough guesses? Do they seem to clump around a certain area? That's probably right. I would agree. I wouldn't just take it on faith. Why wouldn't you though? Why wouldn't you just go, oh, they're right, and I'm going to believe them just because they told me this thing? Why would that be a bad thing for us to do?
That is a very deep question.
Because it sounded like what you were saying, and I don't want to misrepresent you. It sounded like what you were saying is, when it comes to the radius of the Earth, to just accept what somebody told you without checking for yourself by going out physically with a measuring tape in such a falsifiable way is what I'm guessing. Sorry, you weren't saying that, but that's what I'm saying. I can measure it and say yes or no. Crucially, I can say no, that's not correct. Why is that a bad way to decide the radius of the Earth? What makes that bad?
To be honest, I just saw the way that the media manipulated the entire world last year with the whole virus.
Let's not bring up the medical.
Excuse me, I was listening to Jerry.
Hold on a second.
Not allowed to talk about this.
Hold on a second. Riding on eggshells. Hold on a second. So Jerry, just to warn or whatever. Just we don't talk about the.
Well, I wasn't gonna go into it. I'm just giving the three top reasons. So it was that sham of an election.
Oh.
It was the quote unquote virus, and it was the it was the whole George Floyd thing where they're starting to teach this critical race theory, and everyone just hates white people, and so I started to question pretty much everything. So
okay, back to the riding those shows. You're skating a very thin layer of ice here. Okay, can you stick to the topic at hand?
I will not go.
Shape of the Earth. Yeah, I'm with you. Because I'm with you, man. There's been a lot changing lately, particularly with all the SJW stuff and I keep getting in trouble for being sexist and stuff just because I'm straight and white. So I can understand there being I feel like there's something else going on here. And I do think there's probably stuff going on. So it's some of that journey that's taken you to flat Earth, has it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I can feel that. I guess the only difference then probably between you and me is I think that there could be a they and they could lie. I just think they would lie in proportion to the profit and the likelihood of getting caught. And if it was low likelihood of getting caught, high profit, or low cost for getting caught as well. So three things: low cost, low likelihood of getting caught, high profit. I would do that. Whereas I'm not going to gain much from this, and it's going to be very expensive. It's very likely that anybody with a telescope could prove me wrong, and I would probably my head would probably be put on a stake if they found out I was lying about this. I wouldn't see the probability of that being likely. I think the other things you have come to see in the last few years, many of them are probably quite valid, and we'd probably agree on them. The likelihood that they've made the shape of the planet hidden that from us is just so improbable, don't you think? Don't you think it's a really big con to pull?
Not really.
It's not a big con to pull.
Well, I do. I thought you asked if it would be that hard.
Yeah, hard, big, very difficult, improbable, big con to pull. Wouldn't you agree that it is?
No, because not really. Because if you could just get a bunch of, I don't want to say a bunch of and make it seem, whatever. But if you just get some high-powered people to say that it's a globe, and then my
brother's a scientist. He doesn't work with the shape of the planet, but he's a scientist, and he went into that just because he's really good at maths and very curious and very intelligent. At what point would you get to him if he did go into physics or something? At what point would you get to him, someone like my brother who just grew up normally, and go, oh, by the way, all the numbers are wrong at a certain point, and don't tell anybody?
No, I would just ask him.
Probable?
I would just ask him.
Tell me? Sorry.
No, well, I would just ask him, how do you know that the radius of the Earth is the 3,959 miles? That's it.
Yeah. And he might say, I don't know, I haven't checked it, but I guess there's ways to find out and ways to test it. And all of those ways require having a model that we can test against, right? How could we test? And this is why we can't test the flat Earth. This is where the whole discussion started when chemo came in, which is why no model?
It's a
Well,
reification fallacy. Oh, go on.
we can.
The way I see it is that the Earth is flat and everything works fine, and there's a model that describes how it works. It's just assumed to be a globe. But
Jerry,
it's,
why do you
Model's
say
globular
everything
and
works
helps
fine?
us fly planes. Sorry, carrying.
Why do you say everything works fine, Jerry, when it doesn't work fine? Take the altitude of Polaris, or more precisely, the northern celestial pole, from various latitudes throughout the northern hemisphere. That does not work on a flat Earth, sir. Are you aware of that?
I would agree 100%, but I would explain that by saying that some things we just don't know. So of course they're going to be wrong. So we can't.
Thank you. I'm done. I'm done. I'm not going to try to reason with this fool. You guys go ahead.
There you go.
It's a good point that he's making, because there's no assumptions when you measure, especially when you use a theodolite or telescope or something. There's no assumptions being made. You're just measuring. So when Kurt's talking about that, if you go to like New York and measure the angle to Polaris, then let's go south to Florida, do the same thing, and then you get to like Puerto Rico, do the same thing. The way that they fit with the numbers that you measure cannot exist on a flat plane. Just cannot. There's no assumptions to be made. You have real measurements of something with no assumptions. And when you apply it to a particular shape, it doesn't work on a flat plane.
But the measurement hasn't been done. So that's
Jerry,
It
Jerry,
has.
why do you think we need to run a tape measure down to the center of the Earth in order to know the radius of the Earth? Why do you
Because
think
because like you guys said, measurements aren't.
Do you think that's the only measurement that can give us the radius of the Earth?
It's what else you got?
I mean, you basically are already rejecting everything they do with satellites. So those are pretty accurate and are able to measure distances between things and the angles between things. And that's really all we need. We need the distances and angles between 2 points on the Earth, and we can determine the radius of given the arc length and stuff like that.
Well, the satellites assume, a certain like speed that's based on gravity, which has that R built in it, which is, again, it all goes back to that.
Well, it's the same way that your car assumes that it needs gas. It doesn't make the assumption. We know that it needs gas. We know these to be factual information about how things function.
Correct, because you could look in the tank and see, it's bone dry.
Beautiful, and there's evidences for why satellites have are built in this way. It's not. We hope that there's a radius at this particular length, so we're going to throw this machinery into the sky. It's not that. It's no assumption.
So, Jerry, have you heard of spherical excess?
No, sir.
Okay, so in geodetic surveying, which is there's a thing that they've been doing for centuries, where they measure the difference between the azimuth between different points, and usually they do with like mountaintops and stuff like that to figure out how high the mountains actually are, and you measure the angles between the azimuth and a line to another point. And when you draw a triangle, you end up with a triangle that is greater than 180 degrees, which is not possible if the Earth is flat.
Well, do these observations take into account refraction?
Yes.
How is that?
But by many experiments, observations, just a general understanding of light and the atmosphere, or how light behaves in particular mediums.
How is the refraction formula?
So I know the one you've probably heard is 7/6R. Obviously, that is not really valid if you're questioning the shape of the Earth. I don't know what the refraction is. It's pretty complicated if you actually look for a empirical equation that just works all the time without taking into account the radius of the Earth. I don't know what it is, so.
But we could guess at it and become less wrong, couldn't we? We don't know what it is, but we could have a crack.
Yes, yeah.
Well, that's my problem.
So, I don't know.
You're testing our model and going, this doesn't work, and I think that's the right way to go about it.
Well, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I'm asking, is it true?
Yeah, we're asking the same thing. It's just crucially.
It's true based on a made up number.
Why do you think it's made up? Why do you think it's made up?
Why
Well,
do
so
people
far,
keep making up the same number?
I don't know. I have no idea.
I could pick a different number and go, hey, that fuckwit's wrong. I'm the guy who's now right. Whereas if I get the same number, I'm just going to give all the glory to him. Like, yeah, Bob was right. So why would they keep coming up with the same number when there's lots of different people in different parts of the planet keep doing it different ways?
Because it's already been agreed on.
Well, if it was
That's
agreed
exactly
on,
why you're testing it, right? Because you've come up with the number, so now you can test it. The number would be, at its base, measuring anything is kind of like building a model, isn't it? And now you can test it. Why would I choose to go, oh yeah, he's right, if I set out to test it?
Well, probably
Got to the
because
end, realized he was wrong and then said, yeah, he's right. Why? That seems strange, don't you think? That lots of people did this, not just one guy?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would take a lot of work to figure out the actual radius of the Earth, but so why not just take what's already been presumed to be?
The thing is,
done?
the 3959 number is only accurate like around the equator at certain points at probably, I think, at sea level. Everywhere else on Earth, it's different. It's not the same everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
We don't
especially
just
the radius
assume
isn't really right.
we don't just assume the 3959 number when we take. I'm saying we as like general sense, but
we really don't.
They don't assume the number 3959. We actually have different measurements for every location on Earth and what the radius is at that point.
So if the 3959 was a lie, why would they further refine that lie to go, oh, on this point, it's actually slightly different R value? Why do you think they would do that, Jerry?
I have no idea.
It seems a lot of effort to just lie.
Or change previous measurements that were not so precise by pretty good magnitudes or pretty big differences. Why not just stick with that one?
Yeah, it's not changing anyway. Nobody's testing it. Unless we are testing it and we're finding it's wrong because we've got a model that we can test. We can make predictions. If those predictions are false, we can revise our predictions and suddenly they get better. And we are only able to do that because we've got a model, which you're right to test and challenge and question.
By the way, I just found what the actual range is. It varies by 13 miles.
Higher or lower?
So 3950 is the minimum radius. It's the polar radius. We have a maximum radius of 3963. And that's actually the equatorial radius. I think 3959 probably falls. It's probably an average.
Yeah.
And how is that figured out?
By all the ways that we've explained.
3950 is polar radius.
That's what I said, yeah.
Right, okay.
What do you
reckon is the thickness? What do you reckon is the thickness of it, Jerry, of the Earth? If I were to measure from the center of the North Pole to completely underground, what do you think would be the accurate number to come up with?
I don't know.
20 miles be too shallow, or would 200,000 miles be too thick?
Honestly, I have no idea.
So if it could be being a sphere, something between 200,000 is what we're proposing. If you don't know what is due south of the North Pole, and it could be 200,000 miles, what other shape would that be?
I'm sorry, you cut out there. Could you say that again?
So it sounds like you said, I don't know if it could be 20 miles under the middle of the North Pole, the middle of our Earth in that Gleason's map you gave. If we don't know how deep it could it be 200,000 miles?
Yeah, it could be anything.
If it could be 200,000 miles, why wouldn't that be a ball? What shape would that be? Or does that go like 1 million miles further out? East,
I could say it's a million miles and say it's a ball, but I don't, you know,
Okay.
I don't know.
So it's interesting that we got such a low degree of accuracy for your map, your model, that we could go, it could be 20 miles, could be 200,000 miles, and could still end up being a ball. That's my error bars, where what we're saying about the radius is the error bars are so narrow that we have a different radius depending on where and how close you zoom on the planet. Everywhere we've got this slightly different number. Oh no, hang on, put it out. That one's out by 9 miles. How the hell would you know that? I don't know. I think those questions you're asking are great. But why would that be to such a narrow bandwidth of error and yours be several orders of magnitude? You could times that smaller number by itself a number of times and still not get to a number that you would say that's too much. So isn't that interesting that there's one model that is hyper specific and the other model is like, well, it could be 200,000, could be, because I think if I said, could it be 2 billion miles, you would say, yeah, possibly.
Well, as far as I see it, is the number that they give is a specific number, but when I'm sure you guys have seen different, photographs of, like the, I don't know, the black swan, and it's all refraction and all that. So there's no way to really know.
That's right, except if you had a specific number to test.
And if
the
you
way you couldn't know is if we had no specific number. If I said, how high is the dome? What's it made out of? Where are the edges? What's beyond the edges? What's underneath? Every answer would be, I don't know. And at most a kind of waving in the dark guess that every other flat earther would disagree with. Some would say there's something underneath. Some say there's shale is down there. Some say the moon and the sun are inside the dome. Others say it's outside. Everybody gets a different answer on so many different issues, including the earth could be 200,000 miles deep and a sphere. But we've got these numbers that we quibble over where we go, it's not quite 3959. Yeah, what you're saying is exactly right. We've got real specificity. We're really nailing down the numbers. And your side is going,
I would agree.
And did you say earlier, Jerry, that you need to have a measuring tape into the center of the Earth to know the radius?
Well, I was being, glib, but I mean, that would seem to be a pretty good way to find out.
Because if I have a basketball, I can just measure distances on the surface to figure out the radius. I can derive it, right?
Could you explain that?
If I know the length, like the circumference of a sphere, I can derive the radius from it?
Yes, sir. You most definitely could.
Yeah.
Nicely said. So have you ever put your own wheels on your car, Jerry? Like change to spare or something?
Yes, sir.
And you'd like, you got to go to the tire shop afterwards and be like, I need a new tire of this size. When they give you that wheel back with the fresh tire on it, do you measure it yourself? And how many times and ways do you measure it? Or do you go, he's the tire guy, he probably knows his tires. I'll take it.
I'd say he's a tire guy. He knows his tires, but that's, but
and if we checked, we'd just read on the label of the tire, right? We'd just go, this is a 3540 by 7, 35 140 by 70 or something. I forget how the numbers go. And we would believe those numbers. We wouldn't say, if it came to something far more crucial to our safety, like making sure all of our tires are the same size, we would go, the label printed on it's probably something we can trust, even though a human has chosen to do that. And they could be fallible, they could be lying. And the tire guy probably knows that, even though he could be lying. Maybe he's banging my wife and wants me to crash. But I'm just going to trust him, because it's the probability he's got it right is quite high. So if you've got that model for choosing car tires, which could kill you, why would you then go, no, when it comes to some other things, particularly as they get harder to measure? You could just whack out a tape measure and measure your car tire. Something's way harder to measure. You're like, well, I don't know if we should. I mean, actually, no, that makes sense. I don't know if we should trust the experts here when I can't check it for myself.
Because I could hold the tire in my hand and I could just run a tape measure and see. I can't do that with the Earth.
You could get the equipment that's required. You could get that equipment. You could also learn how to use that equipment. And then you can go use the equipment. You 100% can measure the Earth yourself.
Okay, could you tell me how?
Sextant. Get a sextant. It will describe the stars, the where you are on the planet in a way that will make sense for the northern hemisphere. And then all you'll have to do is, with your understanding and ability to use it to find true north in the northern hemisphere, answer how do we do that in the south? How does the southern celestial pole? I posted a clip of it. I'll post it again. South celestial pole, that's one thing you could just test, and you could look up and you could go, even if they're just lights in the sky, why are they this way here and that way there? Everything from, there are far more of them in the south, you'll see from that video. Actually, I'll just stream it now. We get this giant smear of Milky Way. We get totally different constellations, way more stars, and it rotates the opposite direction. And that's something that you could then go, how could they use that sextant, which they use off Polaris, to do that same thing in the south, unless there were two poles to our planet?
I don't know, sir, but...
It won't tell you the radius. It won't tell you the shape to any exactitude. It could be a football or something, but you could sit there and use that, because you can buy them on eBay for like 40 quid, 40 bucks, whatever. That could be a way to test it.
I'm wondering if anyone has seen the Southern Cross from the southern tip of, South America, Africa, and
here's a
Australia.
test for you.
A few videos have been posted in chat pertaining to this, but yes, of course.
Sorry, I keep stepping on you by it. Here's a really interesting way to test it. Look at the flags of countries in the southern hemisphere. Hang on, I'll just find it for you. It appears on a chunk of flags. Now, some of them are because the Brits just slapped it on, but then there's ones like in Brazil where they didn't. And they keep just going, yep, these are the stars we follow when we head south.
But again, that would just mean that there's something weird going on with the sky.
Yeah. We have a southern pole that you can use to navigate, just the same as you have a pole star. If not on a pole, what is it? Why does it circle neatly in the sky? According to your Gleason's map, this constellations, and I lay it down in the grass in the farm and look at it, because out of the city, out of the light pollution, you get this beautiful view of the Milky Way. It's just stunning. And you can lie there and watch it circle in the sky, just like in that video I posted. I'll post it again in the chat.
But I won't doubt that the flat Earth map could be wrong. But at best, a southern pole star would only kind of falsify that map. It wouldn't prove the shape of the Earth. So
that's a correct thing to say for sure. It's 100% correct, because the only thing that it truly does, being scientifically honest, is it eliminates a flat plane from being possible. Having two celestial poles, it could be a cube. The Earth could be a rectangle. The Earth could be a sphere. Could be all these three-dimensional shapes. But what it can't be is a planar Earth.
Because we'd all be looking the same direction. There would be no two ways to get past that.
Exactly.
No. My point was that
set in the West.
My point was that it would falsify the map. It wouldn't prove the shape of the Earth. It would just mean that there's something going on with the sky, something weird.
No, I totally understand, but again, it's not about proving the shape for that specific piece of evidence. Proving the specific globe takes many different types of evidences. What that specific one does, it negates a particular shape, the planar Earth, and then it affirms three-dimensional shapes. Now you need more evidences to eliminate other ones or help prove one. But it does 100% negate a planar Earth.
I would have to disagree.
If you're watching my stream, I'll show you why we think it does this. And that is, I see that star trail due south from me in Australia. I see that star trail go round and round in the sky. Okay? And then due south of here in Africa, they see it going round and round in the sky. And then due south of here, they see it going round and round in the sky. Now, admittedly, as the sun goes round, we don't all see it at the same time, but it's just always doing the same thing at 3 different angles here, right? Which are almost like perfect slicing it into thirds.
Now,
If
is
that's
that
the
with
case, that continent could be all the way around there. That continent could all be all the way around there, and then it might just be doing that. So that could be that map wrong. But then these distances wouldn't make sense. So anybody who'd ever traveled that way, as they used to do the roaring, wasn't it the roaring thingies to get around here? They'd go around here, and there'd be a lot of. They're going from. Oh, where are they actually going from? I get so confused. No, it's down here, isn't it? No. Where is it? Oh, it so doesn't make sense on this map. That's the problem. You could say that map doesn't work, but the angles these would have to be closer together would leave this vast expanse of what the hell's going on. So the map would have to change so much that nothing would make sense anymore on a flat thing. More to the point, every planet and star in the system for some reason is doing this, but appearing to do this wherever you are, depending on where you are. It seems to rise and set there, but then when it rises and sets and I see it disappear down here, they're still seeing it there because it's so far off that direction that this doesn't make sense. Everything on the map doesn't make sense. And then you go, well, the map might not make sense because we don't have a model. But then it's like, why can't we make predictions? Why are the other guys better at making predictions? Sorry, I'm ranting.
No, you're fine. At the base level, it breaks down when you assume it's flat. That's the moment that things break down, not explanations afterwards. But as soon as you say, yes, it is flat, nothing adds up at all.
as far as I see it, the reason why the model works now is because it's based on one number. So it'll always circle back to that because, hey, look, it matches this and that. And,
well, so that's not true, but I'll entertain it. When you fill up your car, do you know what the number is, or fill it up with gas? Do you know what the number represents for that gas?
it measures how much gas is in the tank.
No. I'm talking about at the gas station when you have to choose between the 3 types of gas or diesel.
Yes, sir. It's like 89, 91, and 93. Or
right, but do you know what those numbers mean? I have no idea what the numbers mean, but
octane.
Do you?
It's how much oxygen is in there, isn't it?
I've read about it once, but I'm not really sure.
Right, so it's an unknown number. It's just a number that's provided by these hopefully experts that's handling this. But it's just a number in your mind. It doesn't mean much at all. But you use the same one over and over for a car's lifetime. It works the entire time, and you know it's reliable. But again, you don't know what that number means. But if it keeps working, it doesn't change that it's functional, that it's real, that it's helping your car do what it has to do. And there's nothing false about it, even though you don't know what the fuck number is. It's the same thing with the radius of the Earth. If it's assumed, and again, I'm not conceding it is, but if it's assumed but works for fucking everything, then what is the problem?
Because the gas is real, and the number is not.
But again, it's not about the number. It's about the car works because you put that particular gas in. You don't know what the number means. You don't know where it comes from. You don't know who determined that number. You just know that there is a number that you always use, and your car works, and it takes you where you need to go. The thing works. What's the problem with that? Is there a problem for your car? And if not, why is it a problem for Earth?
Well, the thing is that the shape of the Earth is what it is, and then we just overlay numbers on top of it to, do what you want. If you want to go somewhere, then whatever. But it's is it real? Is what I want to know.
Right. It's as real as that number that's assigned to that particular gas you always put in your car. to make it functional.
But that number is not readily accessible, and as far as I've heard, it's not even possible to really know what it is.
So, so as someone else had said, if you know the circumference of something, we can find the radius. So if the circumference is the edge of a circle, what makes you think we can't measure the surface of Earth?
Because you could just be going in a circle around the North Pole.
Or what if we had reference points? What if we had a reference to, say, a magnetic direction to give us a reference for all other directions?
I'm not.
Like if we have a reference to one particular direction that's reliable 100% of the time, such as magnetic north, we can say 90 degrees from that is something we call west. 90 degrees from that is south. 90 degrees from that is east. Now we have names for these particular directions. So when we make these measurements, we can go in a particular direction, and we could do these measurements many, many times. We could do it millions of times in millions of directions. So now we have all these tiny measurements, and it presents a particular set of information. That information, when translated to a shape, only makes one shape, and it's a spherical Earth, by using all of these tiny measurements to paint a bigger picture.
But you can't go north-south along a single line of longitude. So that's what kind of, trips me up.
You can, but there's no useful need for it.
I would recommend trying it before you say I can't do that, because I think humans have long said, oh, no human can do X and Y. And if it's very difficult and there's not much reason to, maybe nobody yet has, but I think lots of humans have done things that people have said nobody's done that. I think you'd agree with that, wouldn't you? But it doesn't quite make sense to say nobody's done that, therefore it can't happen.
Right, we can walk a straight longitude. We can drive a straight longitude. I see no reason why we can't fly a straight longitude.
Well, then I would encourage you to give it a shot.
Well, I don't have a pilot's license. I don't have the money to charter one, and then I don't think a commercial flight would conduct this because it wouldn't be cost effective.
Oh, come on. Why? Why is this a challenge all of a sudden?
Yeah, what would that teach us?
Well, that would be the one thing that would just kill it for me as far as the Earth being flat.
If that's what would kill it for you, then I would recommend you do that. But I don't mean to be dismissive. Quite often we get dismissive with it because so many flat earthers come in here and they're like, we'll do this. And Chemo's the king of it, making like a really, really outrageous demand and demanding that other people do it. But it does, like, what makes sense for one flat earther won't make sense to another, because like we've said, this comes from scripture, not from actual measurements.
For clarification, for Jerry's sake, it came back from earlier where he wants the longitudinal flight over the South Pole.
Yeah.
That's what he's specifying.
Yeah. You could do one of those. If you could make your way to the Southern Hemisphere at some stage, I will absolutely make sure that I can get you, hopefully with the help of a GoFundMe, on an Antarctic flight where we get you like GPS or something that you would trust, or just your eyes and a compass and a map and a pencil and a calculator maybe, to do an Antarctic flight. That's something I would love to do. But yeah, they don't cross over the pole and keep going, because then it's like, you're talking about a long haul flight to get to somewhere that's quicker to go via a different way. Because we're like, as I was pointing out before on your Gleason's map, we're at 3 points we're at sort of 2 o'clock, 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock, no, 10 o'clock. So anywhere that you would want to fly to another landmass in the Southern Hemisphere, you would skip the bottom of the, skip going over Antarctica anyway. You'd go around its edges.
There's a lot of safety involved as well. If something were to happen, you're essentially, for the most part, relying on landing in mountains to come down during an emergency situation. So I think if you
to rescue too.
Right, exactly. So if you had the choice and you knew your plane that you were in had an emergency and had to land, would you rather land in mountains or, let's say, the ocean?
You make a good point, but then I have to consider, if that's unsafe, then why isn't it unsafe to, go to the moon and Mars and all that?
Yeah.
Well, that's totally separate. That's 100% separate from
That's a good question.
that part. It's a good question, but it's
just a different question.
Right.
Question to a different topic. Do you think that there's? Because I think it's interesting to rest on. I think it's very big of you because you're engaging in really good faith, and I appreciate that, Jerry. And you do acknowledge points that people make. Biodual just made a point, and you accepted that. Did you think that going from the Antarctic flight to the Mars might have been a sort of a bit of a reaction to be like, oh, that was a good point? Because you did say it was a good point, and I thought it was well described too.
No, I asked the honest question. I wasn't trying to be a dick or anything.
No, I don't think you were at all. It seemed to me you were like, oh, that's a good point, but what about this? And I was like, that would be a thing to.
Right, it was just a bit of a jump, very quickly, instead of perhaps digesting what was said, and it seemed like your reflex was, that's a good point, but for some reason it was almost like a defense mechanism to try to bring up something huge right after that, rather than just digesting the easy explanation.